Welcome to the lecture on physical development and health for children ages birth to 3 years old. So we're looking at our infant toddler period. In this lecture, we'll be talking about health and growth, so how children should be developing healthfully and how they should be growing in the infant toddler period. And then also we'll go over some of their physical abilities, some of the milestones that you might expect physically for infants and toddlers. The first 3 years are really a pivotal part of early development. And specifically, we see a lot of really rapid physical growth and ability. So the ability to go from infancy all the way to 3 years old, think about the fact that you're going from crawling to running, from just being able to sit up all the way to jumping and playing all different types and sorts of games. So imagine a child in your own life going from a young child, an infant, who's just learning how to move their body around, just learning how to grab things, all the way to a 3-year-old who's ready to enter into like preschool. That difference in appearance, so how big they are, going from maybe just 5-10 pounds all the way to 30 pounds, and then all of the things that they can do. So it's really fantastic to see children at this age grow and mature in a physical way. We'll find out in later lectures that their physical ability is often unmatched by their cognitive ability and their social ability. So what they can think and do, what they know about the world, and how they can manage their own emotions comes a little bit later than their physical ability. So they're able to run and jump and keep up with adults and do more things in this area, in this age. They're just learning so many things physically. They're also learning how to think and how to do social ability. But we'll find out in lectures later on that toddlers do sometimes struggle with their feelings because they can do so much physically, but they're still kind of catching up in their cognitive and social ability. So when we look at health and wellness, we just really want to set up toddlers for success. And we want to do this by regulating sleeping and eating patterns for sure. So making sure that adults are serving as a model. And they're really the ones that help infants and toddlers regulate their own sleep. Children will sleep when they get desperately tired. There's all types of funny, memes if you're online of kids, passed out asleep on their high chair table covered in spaghetti, or they'll fall asleep at a party on somebody's lap. I've even seen kids outside at parks. They'll sleep in strollers. They will sleep when they absolutely need sleep. But the best thing to do is really to regulate their sleep as much as possible. As humans, we're knowing more and more that we all need sleep. When we don't prioritize our sleep and we stay up too late, it can really start to affect so many parts of our bodies, how we grow, how we think, how we act with other people, how we regulate our emotions. So we want to help children sleep as much as they need. And it does change and it does vary. A newborn sleeps most of the day. They sleep about 20 hours a day. If there's 24 hours, they sleep about 20 of them. A newborn is only awake really to eat, kind of look around, and then they go right back to sleep because they're growing and they've just come out of the womb and so many things are going on. They need to sleep as much as possible. Infants, as they're growing, they need lots of naps. A younger infant might need 3 to 4 naps a day, but by the time you hit 3 years old, you typically only have 1 nap a day. But parents, this information is so readily available from pediatricians, from Google, go to Barnes & Noble. There's a million sleep books out there because parents are desperate to get their children to sleep. But if you can regulate it, and once again, so much of this class, as you'll know from listening to me talk over the next couple weeks, is very much routine for children. We don't necessarily have to have strict schedules, but routines of when children wake up, when they take naps, when they go to sleep, really help them know what's going to happen next and also prepare their body to go to sleep. You've heard of the circadian rhythm, most likely. The sun comes up, we wake up. When it's dark, we typically go to sleep. Children are very linked in with that, but they're also linked in with routines. So if they typically wake at 7 a.m., they have a nap at 1, and then they go to sleep at 7 p.m., that might be good for their bodies to know what's going to happen next. They're in the routine of sleep, and so it can be very, very helpful. Routines with behavior can help as well. So my toddler, even if she's clean, we typically give her a bath every night. Maybe we don't give her soap every night, but we always kind of give her a bath because it's part of her routine. So she has a bath, She has a book, she gives everybody a good night kiss, and then she gets snuggled into bed with her blanket. And so she knows what's going to happen. She rarely gives us a fight at night. She's 2.5 because she is very much used to the routine of sleep. After bath, and that's typically what she protests the most because she knows that's the start of the end of her day, she's going to be going to sleep. We also want to model really healthy eating behaviors as well. And then also engaging in outside activity every day, going to the park, going for a hike, walking around, feeding the ducks at the duck pond, just being outside and moving your body. Teaching a toddler from a very young age will help set you up for all the movement that our bodies need in order to stay healthy as well. We do also know that for the most part, infants and toddlers do inherit their height and body type from adults. So, you know, if both your parents are 5'2", you're most likely not going to hit 6 foot tall. Vice versa, if both of your parents are topping out at 6'4", you're most likely going to be a tall individual. Nutrition does play a small part in it, but for the most part, what our bodies sometimes look like very much plays into the genetic kind of makeup that we were given by our families. But we can also encourage really healthy habits. So making sure that we're eating a variety of foods, drinking lots of water, no juices, no fruit sodas, really just water and milk are all that children need to be offered, and engaging in outside activity by like being taken to the park or the playground on a daily basis. For children, when I run preschools, they have an hour of playground time in the morning and they have an hour of playground time in the afternoon as well. So they're getting at least 2 hours a day. Children need to move their bodies. If you've ever been cooped up on a rainy day with a 2-year-old in your house, you're probably not having the greatest day. That's why there's so many indoor jumping places and playgrounds and stuff like that, is because we know children need to move, and we want that. They love moving. It's a joyful part of their time. We want to keep that alive by making it part of their day and routine. So what should we do in order to make sure that children are developing? A great thing to do is to take your child to a well child checkup. As they're infants, they'll go every 3 months. By the time they're toddlers and preschoolers, it'll be every 6 months to every year. The fantastic thing about this is it's not just, are you growing? What's your weight? What's your height? They check hearing and vision. So I just took my 7-year-olds. They went last week to a well child. So they got their hearing tested. They got their vision tested. When they were little, they had anemia, low iron in their blood. So we get that checked regularly as well. We live in an older home. So we had their lead tested in their blood as well. So we are doing lots of different things. And then the doctor also talks to them, my 7-year-olds. How do you like school? Who are your friends? Mom, do you have any concerns about behavior? How are they doing in school academically? So we're looking at lots and lots of different parts of milestones, not just height and weight, but who is this child on a big holistic sense? How do they learn? How do they move? How do they think? How do they talk to people? And it's great because doctors are looking for milestones to indicate a possible delay in many areas. So physically as well. So why aren't they growing the way that they're supposed to? Or they're anemic. From this blood test, we need to give them iron so that their blood can grow and they will have more energy. Or they don't seem to be talking the way that many of their peers are talking. Let's send them to a speech therapist and see if maybe a little bit of speech therapy will help them learn to talk. We use lots of different screenings, and if you go to the doctor, you have children of your own, or you remember from your own childhood, there's lots of forms that you have to fill out. So when you go with your parents, they're always constantly filling out forms for you. And they're using developmental screenings. The Denver is one of them, but there's lots of different ones, and ask you yes/no questions or ask you to tell you more about your child. This is for children who are maybe falling out of typical developmental ranges. So maybe saying their first word by 1, saying 2 words like more food, eat banana by 2, and then by 3 being able to have short conversations with people. So that would be the normal typical developmental range. So if children are falling beyond that, so they don't have a couple of words at 1 year old, or they're not combining 2-word sentences at 2 years old, then that might be that, once again, we need to go see a speech therapist who might support you. Or social-wise, if they're not making eye contact, they don't play with others, if there's lots of behavioral concerns, there might be additional services and testing that we can help children so that they can develop to their full potential. When we describe typical babies or milestones achieved, there is a huge, wide range. So one of my daughters was walking right as 1, and the other one was walking at 15 months. Anything before 1.5 years is considered typical development. You've probably seen those 9 or 10 months old who look like tiny little babies and are running and toddling after their big siblings. So some start very young, some start walking a little bit later, and that's totally fine. There is a wide range. But at a certain point, we kind of have cutoffs, and that's why we have developmental screenings like those that me and pediatricians and nurses and people like that have been trained to use, because it might indicate that there's an issue with gross motor development. And then in that case, we'll need to see a physical therapist. So for example, one of my twins had hip dysplasia, which is kind of where the hips kind of almost pop out of the socket. So that's why she was a little bit later in her walking. She did eventually need a little bit of physical therapy, and she also needed some medical intervention. Now her legs and her hips are great, and she runs and jumps, plays on a little league team, all of that stuff. But by knowing that she was having a little bit of issues and the way that she walked looked a little bit different, I was able to link her in with those services that she needed. And then she was able to kind of meet her full potential, meet all of those developmental milestones, and now she physically is right where she's supposed to be. So nutrition. When we're looking for nutrition in the first year, it's great. It's really a lot of fun. So we have a saying in child development, food before one is just for fun. So in the first year, breastfeeding or formula feeding is the primary way that we are giving children nutrition. After 6 months old, we can start introducing purees or finger foods. So you see this little boy has a little raspberry, and this little boy has what looks to be a waffle. So we have lots of different ways that we can feed children little tastes of food, but really before 1 year old, it's just trying broccoli, it's trying sweet potato puree, it's trying a waffle or a raspberry. There are certain foods that we don't want children to have. They shouldn't have honey. We might want to wait on some berries, like strawberries. They also, there are some foods that children shouldn't have really, really young, but for the most part, we really want to emphasize vegetables and fruits. So especially dark leafy greens like broccoli, spinach, kale, those types of things. The more that we can introduce it to children in fun and not stressful ways is really great. So if they taste it, great. If they don't taste the beet, no big deal, we'll try a beet again. So not putting pressure on children and just making it fun that tasting different things is just part of life. And that's a good way that we can introduce nutrition to young children. For older children from after 1 year old, we're varying finger foods, and we're also introducing maybe around 1.5 years, 2 years old, foods that require a fork and a spoon, but knowing that they are going to be absolutely filthy like this little one right here. We are not expecting toddlers to know how to feed themselves. It's a brand new skill, something they didn't know before. I typically, when I am feeding my own children for the first time, they have no clothes on. They are just sitting there in a diaper because I know they're going to get dirty and they're going to go probably in the tub right after. After 2, especially as well, they're learning how to do soup with a spoon. That's a really difficult thing as well. You know, getting soup on a spoon, bringing it to your mouth, drinking it, Cheerios, yogurts, puddings, anything like that can be difficult. So we know that there's going to be a lot of spillage. It's just a skill that they need to master like anything else by doing and by trying. So we also know there's a little bit about SIDS and safe sleep as well. So I do want to talk about it. SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome, and that's where a child passes away at night, typically while sleeping. We don't know at this point what causes SIDS. It's a very old thing. There are records of it from prehistory, from the ancient Greeks and Romans, all the way to in the Bible as well. It has been around as long as we have had children. We do know that there are some combinations of factors, risk factors that we can take, that we know about, and there are preventative factors that we can take. So we want children to sleep on their back. So SIDS rates dropped 50%. So almost half of the children who are dying from SIDS could have been prevented if they were put to sleep on their back. So it's really, really important that we put children to sleep on their back, especially in the newborn period. In their cribs as well, they should have no pillows. A baby doesn't need a pillow. My 2.5-year-old just got a pillow, and it's about 1 inch thick, and it's super tiny, and it's in a heart shape. She rarely sleeps with it. They don't have kind of the body physiology that we have, and they haven't been conditioned to like pillows. Infants and newborns especially 100% should have no pillows, no bumpers, no blankets, stuffed animals. All they need in their crib is the baby and a sheet. And the sheet is optional as well. It just makes cleaning up a little bit easier. So literally in a baby's crib or bed, there just should be the baby. A new one that's just come out in the last couple of years is a room with a fan on. So circulating the air, not making it hot and muggy, especially in the summer, getting some carbon monoxide kind of filtered out of the room as well. We know that that can be a risk factor. So children should sleep on their backs, no pillows, in a room with a fan on. There's something called co-sleeping, and that's typically where babies sleep in your room. And that's how I slept with my children their first 6 months. They slept in a crib in the corner of my room just so I could keep an eye on them. I was feeding them at night, so it was a lot easier just to walk over, pick the baby up, get back in bed, or sit in a chair and feed them and then put them back in. I wasn't having to walk across the hall or down the house, something like that. There's also bed sharing, which is where you share a bed with the baby. We typically argue against this for children under the 11 weeks old. So newborns especially are kind of moving around. You're getting used to your baby as well. So some experts in the American Academy of Pediatrics cautions against doing that in the first couple of weeks of life. But there are some bed sharing risks as well. If it's done well with no pillows and no blankets for mom, baby sleeping safely, there are some risks to bed sharing. If you're in a domestic violence situation, bed sharing is not recommended. Children having their own room or their own crib is definitely recommended for the safety of the child. If parents use any alcohol or do any tobacco use. So if you smoke, even if you smoke outside, it can still be on your hair, your skin, and your clothes. Not sleeping in the same bed as a baby if you're smoking. And if you have any drinks, even a glass of wine, not sleeping in the same bed with the baby. And then lots and lots of people in a bed as well has been shown in some studies to be risk factors for SIDS, sleep issues, suffocation as well. Many people in many cultures do choose to bed risk as long as people are aware of the risk factors and can take some steps to mitigate them or to make a conscious decision about how they want to sleep with their child. So another issue is shots, vaccinations, immunizations. They all kind of refer to the same thing. So when I'm talking about immunizations, I'm talking about the regular shots or vaccinations that children need to get. Immunizations are required in childcare in California since 2017. So if you want your child to go to preschool, daycare, and then elementary school as well, you can no longer opt out as kind of a religious exception. We used to have that. It no longer is in effect. You have to have a doctor's signature in order to opt out of immunizations. The great thing about immunizations is that they do something called herd immunity. So I work with children with special needs, and I have for a couple of years. It's really important to me that those children that I work with are protected. So I typically work with children who have had heart disease, heart attacks, and like lots of huge physical issues that make them immune compromised. So many of the children that I work with because of their special needs can't go to grocery stores, they can't go to playgrounds. When they go to doctors, they have to wear masks on their face because they are very sick children. They have had major brain surgery, heart surgery, they were in the NICU for 4 months after they were born because they were premature. These are very sick children who are struggling in some cases to live, and for some of them are in the process of getting better, but their bodies can't even handle going to the grocery store. When everybody else around them is immunized, this means that those children have herd immunity. So things like diphtheria, measles, pertussis, which is whooping cough, polio, hepatitis, all of those types of diseases, if all of us, most of us who are healthy and have not, recently gone through surgeries or had a heart attack and are infants and toddlers, when we all as people have had our vaccinations, this lowers the rate over the entire society, protecting the immune compromised, very sick, possibly dying children among us, keeping them healthy and safe without having to go through getting a vaccination. It is really important, and vaccinations have been shown to decrease morbidity and mortality. So that's the rate of death, dying, or being ill. So before that, there were many cases of things like hepatitis, measles, and mumps. After immunizations, they have gone way down as well. So we know that immunizations work. They prevent death and dying from diseases like mumps and measles, which are very communicable. So I could give it to you very, very easily. I could sneeze on you. The droplets in the air would pass around. You would then be exposed to measles, mumps, hepatitis, things like that as well. So when things are that communicable and can lead to being very sick or possibly dying, it's important that we vaccinate ourselves against this. In some cases, there has been press or groups out there that are very much against vaccinations. I have gone to get my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. I have read extensively on this subject. I've gone into scientific journals. I have met with people. I have just looked into this because this is my field, and I am very much in tune and interested in what is happening with infants and toddlers. I can say with certainty that immunizations do not cause autism. That is kind of a thought that has been going around. There was a Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who kind of theorized this about 20 years ago. He also said that he did a study. His study was never supported by a lab or a university. He actually just looked at children. I think it was about 12 children at a birthday party that one of his children was at. From there, he made some big claims and he falsified data in order to kind of make it look as if getting immunizations could lead to a loss of language or autism. It has now been shown that immunizations do not cause autism. They never did cause autism, and Andrew Wakefield made up his data in order to kind of prove his point or his hypothesis, which is bad science. Dr. Wakefield no longer is a doctor. He has been disbarred, and he is no longer allowed to practice medicine in the UK or in America. So we do know that it does not cause autism. A lot of times children will, with autism, they will have a couple of words, and then we don't know why, but at a year and a half, maybe even two, there starts to be a loss of language. And this is a very much documented fact in some kinds of autism, not all of them. There's different spectrums of autism. Unfortunately, sometimes that has seemed to correspond with an immunization or a shot that a child has had to get. It's probably just a coincidence because we know that it does not cause autism. It is really important, once again, and I want to bring up a couple of recent outbreaks that have happened in San Diego or Southern California area. So hepatitis A in 2016 and 2017 was a gigantic issue. So especially in the homeless populations, there were, I think, 50 people passed away. This was not the newest statistic that I have up on the screen. Over 500 were infected, I believe. Oceanside, downtown San Diego, South Bay, and then parts of Orange County as well were really hard hit by hepatitis A. It's typically from bodily fluids, sharing food, and then like fecal matter and urine that might be on streets or within homes, things like that. That's typically how it is passed. Hepatitis A is a really, really serious infection, though it can eventually lead to death, but there are vaccinations against it as well. So there was a mass movement in Southern California to vaccinate people that were homeless, that worked closely with the homeless, or that were students, or maybe that were in large kind of areas where you would come into contact with a lot of people. So those kind of vaccinations are really, really important so that we can protect people from possibly dying. Whooping cough as well. The last infant who died of this was July 2016. She was under the age of 3 months. She had not received her first immunization yet because she was too young. She had received other ones. There's a very strict schedule that we get from the federal government that tells us the best way to immunize people. She died because other people around her had whooping cough and she got this infection. Oceanside, South Bay, San Diego are regularly affected by whooping cough. I have been exposed 2 different times myself as well, because I was working down in Chula Vista, San Diego, and one of the children that I was working with had whooping cough. So I had to go to a public health nurse. I had to go to all kinds of doctors and things like that to make sure that I didn't have whooping cough. Hadn't given it to my own family and children or anybody that I worked with as well. When I was pregnant with all 2 of my pregnancies, I got the whooping cough vaccinations. My husband got it, and my family, especially my parents who helped me with my children, always get boosters of the whooping cough vaccination as well. Especially when you're bringing a new baby into your home, you want to make sure that other people around it have been vaccinated so that they're not going to give this whooping cough virus to a young child who could potentially be very, very ill and possibly pass away as well. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about growth and development now. We have 2 different kinds of growth and development. We have cephalocaudal, which is head down. So take your head all the way down to your toes. And I put this adorable little baby's face up because I think this illustrates really well that, and it's very, very typical, every child has this, typically have larger heads and then smaller bodies in proportion. So they don't really look like adults because their heads are out of proportion with their body, and that's totally normal. They have big brains that are learning and growing in comparison, especially to the rest of their body. And that's how we know children are growing. As they're growing up, their heads will start to kind of go back into proportion, more adult proportions. Then we have proxima distal growth as well, which is center out. So from your inside, from your trunk, from your stomach, all the way out to your fingers and your toes. So you'll see this most often when a child seems to kind of get chunky. The baby's got lots of rolls. The baby has a little gut going on. Toddler's got, a lot. You can see that they've just eaten, or they've got a little gut. You're going to see that. You're going to say, wow, they're, packing on some pounds. Then they're going to hit their growth spurt. They're going to spurt up, and they're going to look like they've grown 2 inches overnight. None of their pants are going to fit them anymore. So you get big, you get your trunk is starting to grow, and then you shoot all the way out and you shoot up. And that's typically how growth happens with children. So then we're also going to look at motor ability, and I'm going to talk about 2 different types of motor ability: gross motor ability and fine motor ability. They are very much interrelated and dependent on each other. So your ability to write your name or to draw or to have good penmanship or handwriting is definitely impacted by your ability to move your shoulders, your core strength. How you can move your hands like this is very much in tune with the rest of your arm. So they are very much interrelated, but they are 2 different types of motor development. And we'll go over this a lot in this class. So we have gross motor ability: crawling, running, swinging, walking, riding a tricycle, going up and down stairs. So anything with your big body is gross. So gross is big movements, big jumping, big running, using all of your muscles in order to do something. Then fine motor is really just your hands. So being able to draw, being able to cut, being able to throw beads, to stack blocks, to feed yourself. To use crayons, to do Play-Doh. That is all fine motor development. So gross motor, running, jumping, big movements. Fine motor development is being able to hold crayons, to feed yourself, to hold a pen, to draw. So in these following slides, I'm going to go over the physical growth of the first couple of years. So they'll have lots of pictures. So in the first 3 months, we're going to do tummy time. And when they're first born, this is what tummy time looks like. Baby's exhausted, they're so tired, or something like that, or they just do not have this neck control yet, so they just kind of like lay like that. Totally normal. We do want to get them on their tummies as much as possible when they're awake. Nighttime is for on your back, but during the day is having baby be on their tummy. Once they start to get older, then you can see that they can push themselves up. This little one has like a rolled towel under her chest that can help kind of prop them up. They're now able to kind of move their heads. They can look around. They can even start to push up on their hands as well. You will see a lot of screaming. All of my kids were tummy time screamers. Didn't like it at first, but the more that I did it in little tiny increments, 2 to 3 minutes, multiple times a day, then they got that neck support and that neck control. They got that shoulder control and that shoulder strength as well. They could push up, and that's when they started to like it. They'll also, when they're on their legs, they'll kick their legs laying on their back. So you put a baby, and there's those activity gyms that look like this. If you put a baby on their tummy time, then they get upset, roll them over, they can lie on their back, and they can look at all of these kind of toys above them, kicking their feet as they do it. As they start to hit 2 and 3 months, they'll start to bat at the toy. So there's little Mr. Elephant right here hanging down on this activity gym. They'll start to swat at him. They don't have the fine motor ability to grab yet. It's really not something that a 2 to 3 month old has the ability to do. If you put your finger in their hand, like this top picture, they will grasp it. You put a rattle in their hand, so if you put something into their hand, they will grasp it. That's something that they can do. That's the fine motor skill that they have, but they can't reach and grab. That's a little bit later. So at 3 to 6 months, they can start to reach out for toys with purpose. So by 6 months old, if there is a toy that they want, they should be able to grab it, bring it to them, and they're most likely going to put it in their mouth. That's what children do. We know that's really normal. That's how they learn, is by exploring with their eyes, how things hear with their ears, what things smell like, and then also with taste. They're exploring with their senses. It's very normal. They're going to start rolling over like this little girl is starting to do. When you hold them upright like this little girl, they can bear weight on their legs. So you put them on the ground, their legs are going to touch the ground, and they're going to be able to hold themselves up. Mom's got to keep her hands on the baby so she doesn't have balance. She would just topple right over, but she can start to support some of the weight of her body on her legs. They should have increased head control. You can hold them up, they can look around, they can sit supported by you on your lap or in a bumbo seat. So at 6 to 9 months, they should be able to sit up by themselves. They should have increased time on tummy time, because they're going to start getting into that crawl position and going from their tummy to sitting, and then from sitting going back to their stomach. That's something that they should be able to do. They should be able to reach for toys and grab objects. They should be able to grasp them, that like this little child is starting to do, and they'll also start to clap their hands as well. Typically when they see adults do it, they'll clap their hands as well. And they'll also start to sit in little groups like this and start reaching for all different types of toys. Once again, bringing it to their mouth, looking at it, hearing it, seeing what it does, and tasting it as well to learn more about their environment. 9 to 12 months old, so almost heading into a year old, we should have children being able to crawl like this one right here, getting into that crawl position with your hands on the ground, your knees on the ground, and doing the typical crawl. They'll also be able to pull to stand, especially at coffee tables, couches, anything that they can grab onto. They'll pull themselves up to standing, and they'll start to cruise furniture. So like this little girl will hold on, walking back and forth along this coffee table, holding on to one's hand with one hand or two hands, or a finger, is cruising furniture. They might also start to take their first steps. And like this little boy is showing us in this picture, they will be able to grasp foods with their fingers and being able to bring it to their mouth as well. And then also toys as well. They'll be able to manipulate, throw it, bring it to them, crawl to get it. Those are all the types of gross motor and fine motor development we see. So from 12 to 18 months, or 1 to 1.5 years old, children should now be walking. If they're not walking by 1.5 years, we'll typically go to the pediatrician and see if there's anything going on. Like I shared the story of the hip dysplasia. We might also look at other areas as well. They should be able to pick up the toys from the ground. So this little one is stooping or squatting to get to the ground, picking up a toy, and then getting back up to standing. So you can stoop or squat to pick up or retrieve toys. You should be able to climb upstairs by crawling. Using a railing in your hands is a little hard, especially with you're only a little 1-year-old. Those railings are typically too high. The stairs are often too high as well, so they'll crawl with their hands and knees up and down stairs. They can also start to scribble on paper with their whole fist holding a crayon. These are good crayons for children to hold, very chubby crayons that they can hold like this. They don't have the ability to really hold on to crayons, and if they do, they hold with their whole fist and scribble like this. But big chunky crayons, or ones that are in a triangle shape or kind of these bulb shapes, are great for 1-year-olds to be able to scribble with. It's easy for them to hold and to scribble as much as possible. It will be a mess. It will look just like this. They do not understand concepts of paper at 1 year old. They're going to go off the paper, and that's totally normal as well. They just don't understand. They are learning everything new about the world. So everything they do, just assume is going to be messy. They also love bubbles at 1 year old. So they're starting to pop bubbles by using their index fingers like this, pop, 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 pop. And they also are going to be able to stack blocks. So there's little blocks, Duplos, things like that. They can now start to stack them up. 1.5 to 2 years old, so 18 months to 24 months, they're being able to walk and start to run a little bit. By 2 years old, you should be able to run. They're also working on avoiding obstacles, stopping, going over a rock, jumping around a rock. You know, how am I going to get over this rock or this snow or this river, things like that. So they're using their physical ability to maneuver around obstacles or walls or steps or stairs or pieces of wood or logs in their way. So they're using more control in either to run or walk around these. They're going to sit on tricycle. This little girl has her feet on the pedals, but when you're 1.5 to 2, you're most likely pushing your feet on the ground while you sit on the tricycle. They haven't quite figured out the whole pedal steer situation. It's a little bit more complex. They can pick up and they can throw a ball. They're going to scribble with more control. They'll turn pages in a board book, so not a paper book, but a board book. They'll start to turn those pages. And like this little one showed us, love stacking things up, but even more, they love to crash them. 24 months to 36 months, so 2 years old to 3 years old, they should be able to run with a lot more control, stop when they need to, jump with both feet off the ground, maybe 1 foot off the ground, but for sure jumping with both feet off the ground. On a tricycle, they should be able to push the pedals and steer. They're going up and down stairs independently. They're threading beads. And let me show you what beads look like. These are the types of beads that we have. So little tiny beads like this. This is also a fine motor skill that children should be able to have. They should be able to bead large bead necklaces like that. Friendship bracelets and smaller beads would probably be more once children are entering into kindergarten. They should be able to paste. So taking a large glue stick and being able to put a sticker or a piece of paper on it. They're also learning how to cut as well with like safety scissors. First they use both hands, and then eventually at 3 years old, they'll start to be able to cut a little bit. They should be able to feed themselves and wash their own hands, brush their teeth. You're going to definitely check up on that. They should be able to bring the toothbrush to their mouth and kind of move it all around in their mouth. But adults and parents will have to come in later and make sure that it actually gets clean. And then they should also be starting toilet training as well by the time they're 3. Many children have finished. About 2.5 is when children in America, because it's very culturally different, when children in America start sitting on little potties and starting to potty train. So what can you do to encourage children's physical development? For infants, we want them to play on a blanket on the ground. We don't want them in a swing or a bumbo or a car seat or their crib all day long. Playing on blankets on grounds with toys around them or a human to check in and to supervise and encourage them as well. So no less time in strollers, swings, exercisers, those things you put them in and they jump around in, bumbos. You don't need fancy equipment for infants. You literally just need a blanket on the ground and baby rolling around, trying to sit, working on head control. And when they're little, it's part of your day. When I was home on maternity leave, if I needed to do laundry, I brought the laundry into the living room, sat there and folded while kind of baby sat next to me or laid next to me, played next to me, got into the towels, stuff like that. Mobile infants need space to roll, to crawl, to pull up. So pulling up onto a safe coffee table that has had the edges safely contained. They're going to mouth everything. They're going to put everything into their mouth. If there is a Play-Doh container, it's going in their mouth. That is just what babies do, and that's okay. You can clean it and give it back to them. You can put it in the dishwasher. You can wash it in the sink. It's totally fine, and it's very normal that children put rattles and toys, and if they get their older siblings crayons, they'll try taking a bite out of that. Once again, they're learning by looking at things, by hearing things, by smelling things, by touching things, and also by tasting things. That's how we learn when we're little, by using our 5 senses. As toddlers are starting to walk and to move, sharp corners should be padded. They should go to the park, walk on sand, walk on wood chips, walk on cement, walk on grass, uneven surfaces or stairs or slides, anything like that. It really helps them use their balance and their ability to move and get over obstacles, work on balance, core ability, strength, and their stomach and their core area. Older toddlers, every day going to the park and playground as much as possible, exploring their environment with their parents, learning the safety rules of getting out of the car, going through the parking lot, holding on to mommy's and daddy's hands, sitting next to other children, playing next to other children, and going to the park, playground, and just being outside, moving their bodies as much as possible. If that was one thing that I could tell you about physical development, is you just have to do it. You can't sit and learn it from watching a video. Children can't do it by playing video games. You have to learn how to be physical by being physical. You have to go outside and you have to do things. You can't learn Little League by watching a video on Little League. You have to go out and hit a bat. You have to throw a ball. You have to learn all of the rules and sportsmanship related with going to bases and how you steal bases. The only way you can learn that is by doing it. Playing on the ground, sitting, playing Legos, and then no iPad or TV time for children ages 0 to 1. For sure, we know that babies don't need iPad time. They do not need to watch movies. Baby Einstein is not going to make them smarter. FaceTime, if your relatives live really far away, dad or mom is deployed, or just somebody's not nearby, seeing grandma's face on a iPhone is not a big deal. They can wave and say hi when they're really little, but they don't need apps. You don't need to spend money on little laptops or getting them on computers or watching TV, anything like that. Babies do not need it. What babies need is to be on the ground, actively exploring with a parent or a caregiver who really loves to spend time with them. That's what a baby needs. And then limited as well to until they're about 3 years old. So right now, my 2.5-year-old gets one 30-minute episode of Sesame Street every other day, something like that. Typically, if I need to make a phone call or answer an email, or she's sitting with her siblings, she might be allowed one Elmo. Not every day, though. It's definitely limited. Children need to be moving, running, jumping, screaming, yelling, playing with friends. That's what children need to grow physically. They don't need to be on apps. Don't waste your money on pricey apps or little laptops for babies, anything like that. Marketers are trying to tell you that your child needs that. Child development-wise, though, children do not need that in order to grow. So in conclusion, this 0 to 3 or infant and toddlerhood stage of life is a type of rapid physical growth. So children are going from tiny little newborns who sleep 20 hours a day all the way to 3-year-olds who are maybe phasing out their nap. They're running, they're jumping, they're potty trained, they can feed themselves. Tremendous physical growth. Also, we're also seeing that they're hitting their milestones, walking, crawling, jumping, being able to color or to cut with scissors. A lot is happening physically in the infant and toddler period. We also want to help children with healthy habits, so we're helping them get to sleep regularly so that their brains and their bodies can grow. They're getting adequate physical activity as much as possible throughout the day, and their eating patterns are modeled by parents who are eating and providing fresh fruits and vegetables for children to experiment and to start to like the taste of and want to incorporate in their daily diets. So that's it for physical development. This is this week's video lecture. I'll see you guys online. Thanks so much.